I'm a cartoonist from the Isle of Man, and this is my small business called Ned Comics. I do sort of like transmedia stuff, so I like to take cartoon art in as many different directions as I can. This is like games and animation. I just love telling stories, and I like cartoons. You know, I think they're an effective way of presenting a narrative, etc. I'm currently on the last year of my visual communications course. I've published a book. I don't know if anyone's heard about the World Apart project that's happened quite recently over here. I also do music. I'm in a band called Slow Decay, and we recently actually won the Battle of the Bands competition here at the Villa Marina. Also like long walks on the beach. These are the two projects that I have so far. They're both large graphic novel based projects. As I said, one is called A World Apart and one is called A Cruel Wonderland. These were created in part with a couple of other students. A World Apart is currently on sale in WH Smith, if you want to go down and grab yourself a copy. Just to explain the kind of story. Basically there's these two planets that are at war with each other. One of them's quite technologically advanced, the other one's quite poor. They come to an agreement where they would arrange a wedding between the son and the daughter of each planet, but somebody kills the king, adventure ensues. The second one, A Cruel Wonderland, is made in partnership with Becky Cruel, who's like a Manx YouTuber. I don't know if anyone recalls, she became popular in Japan for a little bit. Becky finds a pair of haunted earmuffs, and they take her into the astral world, where she meets a Japanese monk who is attempting to rid the world of negativity. Both of these books are published under B4-3D Media, which is a new company setting up over here on the island. It's run by Kenny Dyack. Its aim is to kind of give students and artists the opportunity to work in this industry that they otherwise wouldn't have on the island. As I said before, I had help with these books through with other students. Somebody wrote the novel, I storyboarded both the projects, and I wrote the Cruel Wonderland one. Just to kind of explain a little bit as to why I think cartoon art is such a powerful tool. A few kind of things linked to cartoons that I think are quite psychologically interesting. Kids like cartoons. I think they're generally more interesting, and you've got creative freedom. You know, you can't really place actors in space, but you can draw a character in space, for example. You know what I mean? So USI is the concept that we can recognize other people's faces quite well, but when we try to recollect our own faces, it becomes quite basic. So the shape that we remember our faces in just comes to like simple face placements and dots. So we find it easier to relate to cartoon characters because we can see ourselves more in them because of the simplicity of their face. Whereas if you look at a realistic picture of like Brian here, for example, you'll have like subjective premeditative judgments on that person's face. There's also shape and colour, which has sort of interesting psychological effects on people. The way our brains kind of work is, I don't know if anyone's heard of semantic networking, but it's basically where your brain links a concept to another concept. So you say bird, you think fly, etc. Shapes have got an interesting part of this because when you see a spherical object, you naturally relate it to concepts of niceness, not particularly nice, for example, but concepts surrounding that kind of feeling. The same with triangles, you'll automatically link it to danger. The reason this is interesting for cartoon art is because you can apply it to characters. You can offer them a perspective on a character. So for example, this is one of my characters, it's called Karma. She was designed with spherical shapes, triangular shapes, and sort of square, quite structured shapes. And it sort of gives you the idea, you can tell she's a protagonist, for example. The shape implies that she's quite action orientated through the different shapes. So that's why characters are quite interesting. So these are the different things I can do. I do storyboarding, mainly through the graphic novel projects. But I do animation, video editing, character design, illustrations, comic art. I can do t-shirts, and all these other things. These are the two projects you've seen before. I storyboarded both of them and sort of laid out the panels, etc. Planned out the entire book. And this can kind of translate into other media. So, for example, advertisements, even live action media. Animation's another one. Primarily, I've just worked with game animation at the moment. The tool I use generally is Adobe Animate, formerly known as Flash. I think it's it's a nice friendly tool. to use, and I just quite like the 2D effect of it. 2D animation is definitely my primary. There's just something about flat 2D art that has a bit more character. I mean, yeah, 3D art's great, don't get me wrong, but you can't beat a good bit of 2D animation. Just as an example as to how you can use this type of art, I mean, you think of illustrations, but they can be plastered on anything. You know, up here's a few t-shirt designs that I've done for people. I've got book covers. I do background art and such in Photoshop. As I said, obviously character art is one of my primaries, but I can, you know, do space art. This was for like a parody of a PSA on healthy eating, you know, like hip carrots rapping about how cool it is to eat healthy. And this are the ones from the game. You know, just kind of like just give some examples of some of the different things I can do with like Photoshop and Flash, etc. Comic strips, obviously Neb Comics, so it's quite a big part of my stuff. I do web comics, and I do stuff that's similarly inspired by like newspaper comic strips, like Garfield and such, for example. Hopefully, in the upcoming months, you might start seeing these appear in Manx newspapers or the Gallery magazine, like a sort of an original Manx take on Garfield, I suppose. 3-panel strip format is a great way of showing narrative. These examples are ones I've done for the hospice. They kind of just educate kids on what to do when someone has a seizure, or even just this one here kind of gives like an abstract explanation as to what happens in your brain when you're having an epileptic seizure. Just as an example as to how you can use this panel-based media to sort of educate